Hello there, Homeschool Nolan here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. Today I'd like to talk to you about economics and why I believe Milton Friedman's free to choose still matters today. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Milton Friedman was a Nobel Prize winning economist in the 20th century who was known for being a powerful advocate of free markets and limited government intervention. In 1980, he and his wife Rose published their most famous book, Free to Choose, which was also a documentary series on PBS. Now, I first read this book in the early 90s as part of my macroeconomics class at Princeton. I remember enjoying how easy it was to read and understand this book compared to other academic books of the time. Friedman was unique among Nobel Prize professors in that he really tried to make his work accessible for everyone. The book has 10 chapters. Each chapter covers how the free market, with minimal government intervention, could better address specific economic issues such as inflation, workers' rights, consumers' rights, education, and equality. Now, this book was not without controversy when it was first written. In fact, if you watch the PBS documentary series, Milton Friedman ends each episode with a debate in the University of Chicago Library with other leading economists, politicians, business, and labor union leaders of the time. And even though this book was written over 4 decades ago, the topics it covers are still being discussed today. And today, I'd like to focus on the first chapter of the book, The Power of Markets, and explore its relevance for today. So what did Milton Friedman mean by the power of markets? Well, in Chapter 1, he writes, "A predominantly voluntary exchange economy has within it the potential to promote both prosperity and human freedom." He then continues by borrowing this insight from Adam Smith. If an exchange between two parties is voluntary, it will not take place unless both believe they will benefit from it. In other words, Milton Friedman believed that when individuals are free to choose and free to make voluntary decisions to buy and sell with others out of their own self-interest, society as a whole will be freer and more prosperous. The example Friedman likes to use, both in the book and the documentary, is that of a pencil. Take this pencil, for example. As simple as it looks, according to Milton Friedman, no single person on this earth knows how to make a pencil. That's because the wood probably came from trees cut down by loggers in Northern California or Oregon. To cut down this wood, someone had to make and use the saw and then drive the truck to carry the wood away. The lead comes from graphite that probably came from a distant mine in another country. The eraser is made from a rubber compound that likely came from Indonesia. And the ferrule, this metal part, is made of zinc and copper that also had to be mined by other workers somewhere else. This simple instrument for writing required many people from different countries to make it. Each of those workers, according to Friedman, was doing their job out of their own self-interest, and probably none of them were ever thinking about making a pencil. No one person had to orchestrate and direct all the people involved to make a pencil. And the consumer who buys and uses this pencil doesn't care what color, what religion, or what nationality the workers were who made this pencil. That, according to Friedman, is the power of markets. Now, it's important to note that believing in free markets didn't mean he believed in total laissez-faire or no government. Milton Friedman also believed that government does have an important but limited role to uphold the rule of law and make sure that people's freedoms didn't infringe upon the rights of others. In fact, he also writes in the book that without a government, we are not really free to choose. The challenge, of course, is then, how does a free society strike the right balance of having a government strong enough to protect our freedoms without itself becoming so powerful that it actually starts to threaten our freedoms? This is a question that is still just as relevant today as it was in 1979. If you watch the documentary, you'll find that to illustrate his point about government, Milton Friedman travels to Hong Kong. Now, this is Hong Kong in 1979. Back then, Hong Kong was a British colony, and to him, it was the ultimate example of the free market at work. As a British colony, Hong Kong back then had no tariffs and almost no restraints on trade. The government had no minimum wage laws and minimal interference in the economy. The government of Hong Kong was really just there to provide law and order to make sure that people could buy and sell with whomever they wanted to. The result, according to Friedman, was a vibrant city with one of the highest living standards in all of Asia. Now, to be fair, Friedman did show that there were also many poor people living in Hong Kong, but he argued that the economic freedom that they had at least gave them the chance that they could lift themselves out of poverty someday. And interestingly, among the poor people of Hong Kong that he showed were refugees from their next door neighbor, mainland China. China, back in 1979, was still a communist country, both in name and in practice. They did not yet allow much private property, and the economy was controlled by the government from the top down. The result was that China was very poor compared to tiny Hong Kong. But 1979 was also the year that China first started opening up its economy to the world and to the power of markets. And we all know what happened since then. Fast forward now to 2021. Hong Kong is no longer a British colony. It is instead now a part of China, which itself is now the second largest economy in the world. So was Milton Friedman right about the power of markets when it comes to Hong Kong and China? Was it the power of markets that lifted China out of poverty and brought prosperity? China did seemingly use the power of markets to successfully grow their economy. For the past few decades, companies have chosen China as a place to manufacture their goods. And China has in turn become wealthy by manufacturing just about everything from iPhones to t-shirts for markets all around the world. But throughout this, China's government has remained in charge. They still control more aspects of their economy than Milton Friedman would have liked. Milton Friedman also believed that economic and political freedom are closely linked. But China seems to contradict that, given that they are still ruled by just one political party. And how about here in the USA? Do the power of markets still work in the United States? I sometimes wonder what Milton Friedman, if he were alive today, would have thought about the ever-widening inequality we have now. Would he still believe that the power of markets alone can still lift people out of poverty? Or do we need government to do more than just simply enforce laws and contracts? And what would he think about the increasing concentration of wealth among fewer and fewer people today? Was that caused by the power of markets? And what, if anything, should the government do to address it? These are all questions that I believe that are just as relevant, if not more important now, to our children as they were in 1979. And while Milton Friedman's ideas may not be the answer to all of our problems, I believe they should at least be discussed and debated. In 2021, we are still debating how to balance the rights of individuals versus what is justice for larger groups. And issues like minimum wage and taxes are all part of a continuing debate about the proper role of government in a free and prosperous society. Hence, if you're a homeschooling parent or a teacher with teenage students, I highly recommend that you study Milton Friedman's Free to Choose with your students. Get them to think about whether his ideas are still relevant today and why or why not. And even if you don't agree with his ideas, reading them will at least get your students to start thinking about how the world really works and what they may need to do to prepare for it. Hope this video has been helpful to you today as you look for resources to help your children and your students prepare for the future. If so, please check out the book in the notes below, And remember to click subscribe and leave a comment. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time.